Hey, welcome back to Learn English Lab, the podcast where we help you stop surviving in English and start truly thriving in it. If you're listening right now, you probably speak German as your first language, and honestly, you're likely already pretty good at English. German and English share the same roots, so you've got a natural head start. But here's the thing, sounding fluent and sounding natural are two completely different things. And German speakers, even very advanced ones, tend to make the same predictable mistakes again and again. Subtle things, wrong order, false friends, pronunciation habits, being accidentally too direct. Small things that native speakers notice immediately. Today, we're fixing all of that. We're going through the most common mistakes German speakers make and exactly how to correct them. So find a quiet spot and let's get started.
Oh, I am so excited to jump into this deep dive. And, before we even touch the mechanics of the language, I think we have to address why your brain is, actively fighting against you.
Yeah, because it really does feel like a battle sometimes, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And like you mentioned in the intro, English and German share a linguistic ancestor, right? They're both Germanic languages. And that shared DNA is great. It's a massive advantage. But it's also a total trap.
Right, because you get too comfortable.
Right on the money. Your brain just naturally takes shortcuts. It assumes the underlying structural rules or the rhythm or even the emotional weight of words overlap entirely. And they just don't.
So it's almost like false confidence.
Totally. And I want to be clear, we aren't doing this deep dive to make anyone feel insecure or hyper-conscious about their English. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, no shame here at all.
None. We just want to, lift the hood and look at the actual mechanical and cultural differences between the two languages. Because once you understand the why behind how English works, the how of speaking it naturally just clicks into place.
I really love that approach. We're essentially we're rewiring your English brain today.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, I think we need to start with the foundation.
Definitely. The structural blueprint.
Yeah. Because before we can start worrying about polishing an accent or throwing in native sounding slang, we have to fix how your brain actually builds a sentence from the ground up and how it perceives time.
Because if the foundation is built on German logic, the whole English house is going to lean.
Absolutely.
Oh.
So let's talk about the biggest structural difference right out of the gate. Word order. And specifically where we put the verb.
Oh, this is the perfect place to start. So in German grammar, there's this concept called the Satzklammer, the sentence bracket.
Right, the dreaded bracket.
It really is. Because German, especially in subordinate clauses or with compound tenses, it has this habit of holding the main action-carrying verb hostage until the very last word of the sentence.
It's like it's building up to a grand finale.
Spot on. It creates this built-in dramatic tension. Yeah. You literally have to listen to the entire sentence, the who, the when, the where, the why, before you finally find out what actually happened.
Right, okay, so a German speaker will formulate a thought in their head like, Ich habe gestern den Bericht fertiggestellt. And if we translate the architecture of that sentence word for word into English, we get, I have yesterday the report finished. Which, it just sounds like you're setting up a mystery.
It really does. You're sitting there as an English listener, taking in all this context, just waiting for the action to drop at the end.
Yeah, but English is wired completely differently.
Yeah.
I always picture English as this highly caffeinated, impatient executive.
I love that.
It does not have time for mystery.
Yeah.
English demands the bottom line immediately. Who did what? Give it to me right now.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. English relies so heavily on immediate gratification to make sense of the world. So the fundamental unbending structure of a standard English sentence is subject, then verb, then object.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yes. You say, I finished the report yesterday. You hit the listener with the action up front. I finished.
And then the listener can just relax, right?
Exactly. Well, undeniably, they know what happened right away. Everything else, like the report, the time, the play, it's just extra detail trailing behind the action.
But I imagine it must be incredibly difficult to untrain your brain from that German structure. Because when you're speaking, you aren't just reading a script, right? You're formulating thoughts in real time.
It's a huge cognitive load.
Right. So if your brain is wired to gather all the situational context before it selects the verb, forcing that verb out immediately must feel entirely unnatural. You're basically exposing the ending of the story before you've set the scene.
It feels incredibly vulnerable at first. Your brain desperately wants to protect the verb, save it for the end.
Yeah.
So when we hear advanced learners say things like, we must tomorrow the meeting cancel, or she has always her work on time done, We instantly recognize the German scaffolding underneath those English words.
So how do you fix it? Just practice.
Conscious practice. You have to actively practice front-loading your sentences. You lock in that subject-verb pairing early. We need to cancel tomorrow's meeting. She always finishes her work on time.
And, it isn't just about where the word lives on the page either. It completely impacts the rhythm of how you speak.
Oh, 100%.
Because English is what linguists call a stress-timed language,
Yeah.
right? And it usually puts the heavy vocal stress on the main verb or the key noun. So I would naturally say, I finished the report yesterday, or we need to cancel the meeting.
Right. You punch the action words.
Yeah. But because a German speaker is waiting for the end of the sentence to deliver the action, they often put the vocal emphasis at the very end. So they'll say, I finished the report yesterday, with this rising, heavy intonation on the time.
Which sounds really jarring to an English ear.
It really does. It sounds like the time is the most shocking part of the sentence.
You are fighting both syntax and rhythm at the same time. The trick is to anchor the action. If you're listening right now, try saying it out loud. Hit the verb early and give it weight. I sent the email this morning. We canceled the trip because of the weather.
And once you get comfortable pushing that verb to the front, you can start using contractions to speed it up.
Absolutely. That sounds incredibly native. We don't typically say, I have already read it. We smash the subject and the helping verb together. I've already read it. She's finished. We've decided.
Okay, so we've established that English wants the action right away. But if the verb is the engine of the sentence, it also dictates the timeline. And this is where we run into a massive cognitive wall for German speakers. Let's look at how English measures time, starting with the words since and for.
Oh man, this is a beautiful example of a linguistic illusion.
Okay, explain that.
Well, in German, you have this wonderful, highly efficient little word, Zeit. And it is a total multi-tool. It covers both a specific point in time and a duration of time.
Right.
So if you want to hear seit 2019, uses Zeit to mark a starting year. And if you want to hear seit 5 Jahren, uses the exact same word, Zeit, to measure a 5-year duration. Your brain relies on one tool to do both jobs perfectly.
But in English, we force you to buy 2 different tools. And if you use the wrong one, the whole sentence collapses.
It does. English strictly divorces the starting point from the duration. So since is exclusively used for the specific anchor point in the past. It is the exact moment the stopwatch started.
Okay, so like since 2019.
Right. Since last Tuesday, since I was a child, you cannot, under any circumstances, use it for an amount of time. To measure the length of time, the actual duration on the stopwatch, you must use for 5 years, for 3 months, for a long time.
So if I say I live here since 5 years, that's completely broken English.
It's broken on 2 levels, actually.
Oh, wow. 2 levels.
Yes. First, the preposition is wrong. It has to be for 5 years. Second, the tense is wrong. When you are describing an action that started in the past and is still continuing into the present, English demands the present perfect tense, not the simple present.
Ah, okay, so I lives is wrong.
Right. The correct natural phrasing is, I've lived here for 5 years, or she has worked at the company since 2019.
It is so fascinating how a tiny 3-letter word completely changes how the listener's brain maps the timeline. Because if you say, we are friends since a long time, an English speaker's brain actually stumbles. It's trying to find a specific calendar date that just doesn't exist.
Spot on. It breaks the mental logic.
Which brings us perfectly to the broader issue of timelines, honestly. The present perfect versus the simple past.
Now, this might be the most deceptive trap in the entire language.
I totally agree. Why is it so tricky?
Well, in German, the perfect tense looks structurally identical to the English present perfect. Ich habe gesehen looks exactly like I have seen. And German speakers use the perfect very freely in conversational speech, even when they're talking about specific finished events in the past.
So a German speaker will just effortlessly say, Ich habe ihn gestern gesehen.
Yes.
Which translates directly to, I have seen him yesterday. And to a German ear, that sounds totally fine. But to an English ear, it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. Why is that? Why does that timeline feel so wrong to us?
Because English treats time like a physical space with doors. The simple past tense is a closed door. Yesterday is over. It is completely sealed off. The action is trapped inside that finished time period.
Okay, I like that visual. A closed door.
Right. Therefore, if your sentence contains any specific finished time marker words like yesterday, last year, in 2010, 2 weeks ago, you are absolutely forbidden from using the present perfect. You must use the simple past. You just say, I saw him yesterday.
So yesterday's the closed door. But what about the present perfect? Is that an open door?
That's a perfect metaphor. Yes, the present perfect is an open door. It's a bridge connecting the past to right now. You use it when the time frame isn't finished or when the specific time doesn't matter and only the experience matters.
Like life experience.
Absolutely. We use it with open-ended words like ever, never, already, yet, or just. If I ask, have you ever eaten sushi? I'm not asking for a calendar date. I'm asking about your life experience from the day you were born up until this exact second. It's an open timeline.
Okay, wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
What if I say, I've just seen him? That feels like it happened a minute ago. That's a finished action, right? So why is that allowed to be present perfect?
Great question. Because the word just isn't a specific clock time or a calendar date. It implies the recent past, sure, but its entire grammatical purpose is to connect that past event to your current state in the present.
Oh, I see.
You're basically saying the event happened recently and it is highly relevant to our conversation right now.
Okay, so the golden rule for the learner is to hunt for the finished time marker. If you see ago, last week, yesterday, you slam the door shut. Simple past. I saw the movie last weekend. Not, I have seen the movie last weekend. She left the office an hour ago. Not, she has left the office an hour ago.
You hit the nail on the head. Master that single rule finished time equals simple past, and your English instantly levels up in clarity.
Well, speaking of clarity, let's look at a grammar trap that doesn't just sound awkward, but actually communicates the exact opposite of what you intend.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah, I'm talking about modal verbs, must versus have to. This one is genuinely dangerous in a workplace setting.
Dangerous is undeniably the perfect word for it. In German, the verb müssen means must, or to have to, and its negative form nicht müssen logically translates to not to have to.
Makes perfect sense.
It does. So if a German speaker wants to tell a colleague that a task is optional, they will think of du musst das nicht tun, which translates wonderfully in intent to you don't have to do that.
Right, meaning there is no obligation. You can do the task if you really want to, but nobody is forcing you.
Right on the money. But here's the cognitive trap. Because müssen sounds phonetically identical to must, German speakers frequently translate the negative directly into you must not do that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I could see the impending disaster there.
It creates massive interpersonal friction. In English, you must not do that does not mean you don't have to. It means it is strictly forbidden. It is an authoritarian command to stop.
Oh, man. So imagine a German manager trying to be generous to an English employee. The manager says, you must not attend that late night meeting.
Oh, no.
Right. The manager thinks they're saying, take the night off. You don't have to go. But the English employee hears, you are officially banned from this meeting under penalty of disciplinary action.
It happens all the time, and it causes so much unnecessary anxiety. You really must draw a hard line in your brain here. If an action is optional, use don't have to or don't need to. You don't have to bring your laptop. We have spares.
And if it's forbidden.
If an action is strictly prohibited, use must not or can't. You must not smoke in the server room.
That is such a vital distinction. And, while we're talking about modals like must and can, I really want to bring up this funny habit I notice with advanced learners.
Which one?
It's the urge to stack modal verbs together. Like I'll hear things like, can you help me with this? Or you might consider it. It feels like they are throwing every possible polite conditional verb into the blender just to be safe.
It's an overcompensation for sure. German grammar allows for some wonderfully complex, stacked modal-like constructions to express nuance. But English, on the other hand, is incredibly rigid here.
Very rigid.
It operates on a strict one modal per verb phrase policy. You just cannot stack them.
It's like having a tool belt, and English says you can only pull out one tool at a time.
That's a great way to put it. You have to choose your weapon based on your specific intent. If you are talking about ability, you use can. I can speak German. If you want to make a polite request, you use could. Could you send that file?
Right. And advice is should.
Yep. You should talk to HR. If you are talking about a hypothetical condition, use would. I would help, but I'm busy. If it's a possibility, use might. It might rain, but you can never, ever combine them.
So saying maybe she could help is completely ungrammatical.
Totally ungrammatical. Just pick the most accurate tool. Maybe she could help.
It's an economy of language. Keep it clean. Now, before we move out of the structural blueprint of English, we need to talk about the tiny, highly irritating filler words that hold the bricks together. Articles and prepositions.
Oh, the tiny words that cause the biggest headaches.
They really are. They're everywhere, and they feel impossible to master. Let's start with articles.
A and D.
They are the bane of every language learner's existence. So German has a notoriously complex article system der, de, des, which changes based on 3 genders and 4 grammatical cases. It's a nightmare for English speakers to learn, honestly.
Oh, tell me about it.
But ironically, because it is so highly structured, it's very predictable for a native German speaker. English article use is much looser, which actually makes it harder to map for them. Because German will drop an article where English demands one, right? And German will use an article where English drops it. For example, a German speaker might say, I need the advice from expert, completely dropping the am before expert. Right. Or they might say, she is the doctor, when they're just talking about her general profession, not pointing out a specific person.
Absolutely. English article logic rests on a few core pillars. First, if you are mentioning a singular, countable noun for the very first time, you must use the indefinite article, a or an. I read an interesting report today.
Right, because I don't know which report yet.
Exactly, or rather, spot on. Second, once that thing is known to both the speaker and the listener, you switch to the definite article, the. The report was about sales. And third, if you are making a broad, universal statement about a plural or uncountable noun, you drop the article entirely. Water is essential for life, not the water.
So if I'm introducing someone's job, I say he is a manager, one of many managers in the world. But if I say he is the manager, I'm implying he is the specific manager of this specific store we are standing in.
Right, on the money. And then we have the chaos of prepositions. In, on, at.
Good boy.
German prepositions like in, enough. They overlap with English prepositions in a very messy Venn diagram.
I'll be honest, when I was learning a second language, prepositions just felt like rote memorization. Is there any actual underlying logic to in, on, and at in English? Or is it just chaos?
There is actually logic to it. It helps to think of them dimensionally, starting with spatial logic. So at is 0-dimensional. It represents a specific point or a set of crosshairs on a map at the bus stop, at the door, at the intersection. It's just a location coordinate.
Okay, so it's just a dot. What about on?
On is 1 or 2-dimensional. It implies a line or a flat surface. On the wall, on the table, on Baker Street. You are resting upon a surface.
Makes sense.
And finally, in is 3-dimensional. It implies containment, boundaries, or enclosure. In the box, in the room, in London. You are physically inside a defined border.
That is incredibly helpful. Does that same dimensional logic apply to time?
It mirrors it beautifully. At is the most specific point in time, a dot on the clock. At 3.0 p.m., at midnight, at sunrise.
So it's the crosshairs again.
Yes. On expands slightly to cover a flat day on the calendar, on Monday, on July 4th, on my birthday. And in expands even further into a container of time, a month, a year, a season. In January, in 2023, in the summer.
Wow, so it's a funnel. At is the narrowest point, on is the middle, in is the widest container.
That's a brilliant way to think of it.
So it's completely wrong to say the meeting is at Friday. It needs to be on Friday. And you can't say she lives in the Baker Street. You drop the article and use the surface preposition, she lives on Baker Street.
Perfectly said. But honestly, the best way to practice this isn't to overthink the geometry while you're speaking, but to learn these in chunks. Don't just memorize that days take on. Memorize the whole phrase on Monday as a single unit of vocabulary.
I love that. Chunking makes it so much easier. All right, so if the grammar and word order are the structural foundation, let's talk about the bricks themselves.
The vocabulary.
The bricks.
Yes, because this is where the shared history of our languages becomes incredibly deceptive. There are words that look and sound so similar that they lull you into a false sense of security, but their meanings have drastically drifted apart over the centuries.
We call these false friends, and they are responsible for some of the most comical and sometimes just awkward misunderstandings.
The ultimate false friend has to be become versus get. I honestly can't help but laugh when I picture a German speaker walking into a coffee shop in London and confidently saying, "Can I become a coffee, please?" Just magically intending to transform themselves into a cappuccino.
It always makes native speakers pause for a second, because the German verb bekommen looks and sounds remarkably like the English word become, but bekommen means to receive or to obtain something.
Right.
The English word become strictly means to undergo a transformation. A caterpillar becomes a butterfly. A medical student studies for years to become a doctor. You cannot become a coffee, and you cannot become an email.
So when someone says, I became a letter from the bank, an English speaker literally pictures them turning into paper. The fix is simple, though. You just have to use receive or get. Can I get a coffee? I received a letter.
Yes, and I really want to emphasize the word get. In German culture, using a simple word like get might feel a bit uneducated or overly informal when receive or obtain is available.
Feels basic, right?
Yeah, but in spoken English, get is the absolute workhorse of the language. It is the engine. I got your message. I got a promotion. We got home late. Native speakers use it constantly. Do not be afraid of get.
That's great advice. Since we're on the topic of false friends, let's dissect a few more rapid-fire examples. Starting with a classic workplace mix-up. Chef. In German, their chef is the boss of the company.
But in English, a chef is strictly a culinary professional. It comes from the French chef de cuisine.
So if you walk into an office in New York and say, my chef is really demanding today,
everyone is going to assume you have a side hustle working in a Michelin star kitchen. The person managing you at the office is your boss or your manager.
Here's another one that deals with personality. Sensible.
In German, sensible describes someone who is sensitive, someone whose feelings are easily hurt, or who is deeply emotionally aware. But the English word sensible means something completely different. It means logical, practical, having good common sense.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wearing a raincoat in a storm is a sensible decision. If you want to say your coworker gets their feelings hurt easily, you must use the English word sensitive.
Wait, isn't there any crossover at all?
Very little. If you say, my boss is a very sensible person, a German speaker might think they are saying the boss is emotionally fragile. But the English speaker hears a compliment. The boss makes logical, rational choices.
That's a wild difference. And what about sympathisch?
Another huge divergence. German uses sympathisch to describe someone who is simply nice, friendly, or likable. He is a sympathisch guy.
Sounds positive.
It is. But the English word sympathetic means showing pity or deep compassion for someone else's suffering. If you say, I am very sympathetic, you aren't saying you're a fun guy to be around. You're saying you feel deep sorrow for others. If you just mean someone is nice, say, he's very likable, or she's easy to get along with.
I think my favorite one, purely because of how extreme it is giftig.
Oh, absolutely. That one is a classic. In German, das Gift is poison. So giftig means poisonous or toxic.
But in English, a gift is a present.
Right. So if someone is gifted, it means they are highly talented, blessed with natural ability. A gifted child is a genius. A giftig child in German is, well, venomous. It's a massive difference.
Yeah, you definitely do not want to call someone's kid venomous.
Oof.
Okay, let's shift to a false friend that causes a lot of actual professional friction. Actually versus currently.
This one is an absolute communication barrier. The German word aktuell means current or happening right now. So a German professional will naturally say, I'm actually working on the new marketing campaign, fully intending to say I am currently working on it.
But the English word actually carries a very specific social weight, doesn't it?
It really does. In English actually means in reality, as a matter of fact, or surprisingly. We use it to correct a misconception or to gently push back against a false assumption.
Ah, I see the problem.
So if an English manager asks, are you still focused on the Anderson account? And the German employee replies, I'm actually working on the marketing campaign. The manager hears a subtle defensive correction.
It sounds like, contrary to your flawed assumption, I am doing this other thing.
Spot on. It can come across as slightly arrogant or contradictory when you didn't mean it that way at all.
So if you just mean at this moment in time, you have to train yourself to say currently or right now, like, I am currently focused on the marketing campaign. Only use actually when you are revealing a truth that goes against expectations. I thought the project would take a week, but actually we finished it in 2 days.
That's a perfect example. Now, there is one more vocabulary trap we need to look at, and it's not a false friend, but a split meaning. In German, the verb machen is a heavy lifter. You use it for almost everything.
Oh, right. You machen your bed. You machen a decision. A mistake. You machen your homework.
Exactly. But English ruthlessly splits this concept into two distinct verbs, make and do.
And as a learner, it feels like there's absolutely no logical rule for which one to use. You just have to guess, don't you?
It's true that a lot of it comes down to historical collocation words that just naturally evolved as partners over hundreds of years. However, there is a very reliable philosophical framework you can apply. Think of it as the difference between creation and execution.
Oh, I love this. Break that down for me.
Generally, we use make when we are constructing, creating, or producing something new that did not exist before. It results in a tangible or conceptual product. You make a decision, you synthesized information and created a choice. You make a mistake, you generated an error, you make progress, you make friends, you make a plan.
So it's about the genesis of something.
Yeah.
Creation.
Exactly.
Now, what do?
Do is tied to execution. It's about activities, tasks, chores, or ongoing obligations where you aren't necessarily creating a physical object, but rather performing an action. You do your homework, you do a favor, you do the dishes, you do research, you do your best.
That makes so much sense. But of course, because it's English, there are always exceptions to frustrate us, right?
Always.
Like you make the bed. You are building the bed frame from scratch with wood and nails. You're just organizing the blankets, which is a chore. So why isn't it do the bed?
Because language is messy. And that's why, while the creation versus execution rule helps like 80% of the time, you ultimately have to learn these as paired collocations. When a German speaker says, I need to do a decision, or can you make me a favor? It instantly flags the brain of the native listener.
It just sounds wrong.
It does. You have to train your ear by reading and listening to natural English. So make a decision just sounds right, and do a decision sounds physically wrong.
All right, so we have the architectural blueprint of the grammar, and we have the correct vocabulary bricks. Now we have to talk about how to actually get those words out of your mouth. We're moving from the brain to the muscles. Let's talk about pronunciation and connected speech.
This is where language transitions from an intellectual exercise into an athletic event. You are asking the muscles in your jaw, your tongue, and your throat to perform highly specific gymnastics that they have literally never practiced before.
And the undisputed gold medal of English phonetic gymnastics is the dreaded TH sound.
The TH sound is a notorious hurdle because it simply does not exist in the phonetic inventory of the German language. Your mouth has never had a functional reason to make this highly specific, frankly awkward movement.
So what does the brain do?
It panics, and it substitutes the closest German sound it has in its toolkit.
Which usually results in replacing the TH with a D, a Z, or an S sound. So words like this, that, they turn into dis, that, they, or zits, that, say, and think becomes sink or fink.
Absolutely. And to be clear, native speakers will almost always understand you through context. We know you mean think, not sink the boat. But substituting these sounds creates a very pronounced, stereotypical accent. To fix it, we need a brief anatomy lesson, because there isn't just one TH sound in English, there are two.
I always forget that. Walk us through the physical mechanics of both.
Let's start with the voice TH. This is the sound you hear in words like this, that, they, and breathe. To make this sound correctly, you must physically push the tip of your tongue slightly forward, resting it lightly between your upper and lower front teeth.
Between the teeth.
All right, do not bite down, just let it rest there. Then, you force air out of your mouth while simultaneously vibrating your vocal cords. If you do it right, your tongue should literally tickle the, this, that.
And how is the second one different?
The second is the voiceless TH. This is used in words like think, thank, three, through, and both. The physical tongue position is identical lightly between the teeth. But this time, you push the air out without engaging your vocal cords at all. It is purely a breath of air passing over the tongue. Think, three, both.
You know, when you first practice this, it feels incredibly exaggerated. It feels almost rude, like you were intentionally sticking your tongue out at the person you're speaking to.
It does, and that intense self-consciousness is exactly why German speakers instinctively pull their tongue back behind their teeth, which instantly turns the TH back into an S or a D. You have to push past that awkward feeling. It feels huge to you, but to the listener, it just sounds like natural English.
I think we should give the listener a physical challenge right now to test their muscle memory. Try saying this tongue twister out loud and really focus on keeping the tongue forward. These 33 things are worth thinking through thoroughly.
Oh, that is a brutal workout. These 33 things are worth thinking through thoroughly. If you can say that sentence smoothly without reverting to D's or S's, you have officially conquered the TH sound.
It's tough, but it's doable. Let's look at another pronunciation trap, and this one is purely a visual trick played by the alphabet. W versus V.
Yes, your eyes are deceiving your mouth here. In German, the letter W is pronounced identically to the English V. The German word Wasser sounds like Wasser. So when a German speaker reads an English sentence containing a W, their brain automatically fires the German phonetic rule.
Oh, I see.
They will say, I want to go instead of I want to go, or where is the vine instead of where is the wine.
I noticed when I watch British actors speak, their bottom lip is doing a lot of specific work for the V sound, almost like they're biting it. But the W is totally different. How do we physically separate these two letters in our mouths?
Let's start with the English W. To make a proper W, your lips need to form a tight, small, round circle. Imagine you are getting ready to blow out a candle or you are about to whistle. Crucially, your teeth do not get involved at all. They do not touch your lips. Want, water, weak, why.
Round lips, no teeth. Got it. And the English V.
The English V is a completely different mechanism. Your lips are not round. Instead, your top front teeth lightly rest against your bottom lip, and you push voiced air through that small gap, creating a distinct buzz or vibration on your lip. Very. Voice. Visit. Value.
So it's the contrast between wine, where your lips are round and open, and vine, where your teeth are buzzing against your lip. Wet versus vet. West versus vet.
That's a perfect contrast. You have to consciously remind yourself when you see a W in English, round your lips. Do not let your teeth touch your bottom lip.
Now, nailing individual sounds is great, but we don't speak in isolated words. We speak in sentences. And this brings us to a fascinating concept. Connected speech. I hear a lot of advanced German speakers who have perfect grammar and great pronunciation of individual words, but they still sound a bit robotic or stilted. Why is that?
Because they are carrying over a phonetic habit from German. German is what linguists call a syllable-timed language, and it places a high value on clear enunciation. German speakers are taught to pronounce every single word clearly and separately, so they will say, "I'm going to go to the store." But English is a stress-timed language.
What does that mean exactly? Stress time.
It means that in English, the time it takes to say a sentence is dictated by the number of stressed syllables, not the total number of words. English wants the stressed words, the verbs, the nouns, to fall on a regular, rhythmic beat. To maintain that beat, all the little unimportant words in between get crushed, blended, or entirely swallowed. This is called connected speech.
Ah, so fast English is actually quite messy. It flows like water, whereas German chops like a knife.
That's a great analogy. In English, we use linking, where the consonant at the end of one word attaches to the vowel at the beginning of the next. Turn it off becomes turn it off. We use elision, where we just drop tricky consonant sounds completely to save time. Next day becomes next day. And we use heavy reduction, where whole syllables disappear. Going to becomes gonna. Want to becomes wanna. Have to becomes hafta.
Let me push back on this, though. A lot of learners are terrified of using words like gonna or wanna in a professional setting. Doesn't using reductions make you sound uneducated or too casual for a boardroom?
I'm so glad you brought that up because it is a massive misconception. There is a profound difference between slang and phonetic reduction. Gonna is not slang. In spoken English, even highly formal native speakers, CEOs, judges, academics naturally reduce these sounds when speaking at a normal conversational pace.
Wait, really? Even a judge?
Absolutely. If a CEO is giving a formal keynote address, they will naturally say, "We're going to look at the third quarter numbers." If they purposefully over-enunciated, "We are going to look," it would sound incredibly unnatural, like they were lecturing a child or a computer.
Okay, so writing gonna in a formal email is bad, but saying it out loud in a meeting is totally fine. It's about sounding human, like saying, "What you doing later?" instead of, "What are you doing later?" Or, "I don't know," instead of, "I do not know."
Spot on. Blending your words softens your delivery. It makes you sound approachable and fluent.
Which perfectly brings us to our final and perhaps most important section, the social dance. Culture, politeness, and pragmatics. Because here's the harsh truth. You can master the word order, you can memorize the false friends, and you can nail the TH sound, but if you do not understand the cultural rules of English, you will still sound completely wrong, and you might accidentally offend people.
This is the invisible layer of language. We're moving from how to say things to what is appropriate to say, and the biggest cultural fault line between German and English is the directness divide.
I think anyone who has worked in an international office has felt this friction. German communication culture places the highest value on directness, efficiency, and unvarnished truth. Getting straight to the point without any fluff is seen as a form of honesty and a sign of respect for the other person's time.
It's a highly functional way to communicate. In German, saying exactly what you mean is a virtue. But English culture, particularly British English, but heavily influencing American professional English as well, operates on a totally different wavelength. English relies incredibly heavily on softening language, hedging, and indirect phrasing.
It's all about politeness.
Yes, in English culture, the highest form of respect is preserving the other person's autonomy. You never want to sound like you are imposing a command on someone.
Right, so a direct translation of a normal German sentence can sound incredibly aggressive in English. If you're at a restaurant, a German speaker might comfortably say, "Give me the salt," or "I want a coffee." They are just efficiently stating a need.
Oh, absolutely.
But to an English waiter, that sounds like a monarch barking orders at a peasant.
It creates instant defensiveness. In English, you must soften requests by turning them into questions. Could I get the salt, please? I'd love a coffee when you have a moment.
And this becomes a minefield in a professional setting, especially during a disagreement. Let's say a colleague presents a flawed strategy. A German professional might say, "Your idea is wrong," or "That doesn't work."
Which would cause a collective gasp in an American or British boardroom. It violates the social contract of preserving harmony. To disagree politely in English, you have to use a technique called hedging.
Hedging.
Yeah, hedging involves using words that cushion the blow of the disagreement.
So instead of "Your idea is wrong," you'd say something like, "I'm not sure I completely agree with that," or "That's an interesting point, though I wonder if there might be another way to look at it. I think we might want to reconsider that approach." Native English speakers constantly pad their sentences with phrases like, "I think," "I feel like," "kind of," "sort of," "maybe," "perhaps."
I hear complaints about this all the time from my German clients. They say it feels so inefficient, it feels weak, like I'm not confident in my own expertise. But you have to reframe it. This isn't weakness. It is profound social intelligence. It is social lubrication. It allows ideas to be heavily debated without egos being bruised.
I've also noticed there's an audio component to politeness. It's not just the words you choose, it's the melody of your voice. Intonation.
That is a crucial observation. Politeness in English is tightly linked to vocal pitch. A polite request naturally goes up in intonation at the very end of the sentence. Could you send that file over, with a rising, light pitch? Direct commands, on the other hand, stay flat or drop in pitch. Send that file over, with a falling pitch.
So even if I use the nice, polite English words, if my voice stays flat and rigid, could you send that file over? The English listener still registers it as a demand, not a request. You have to physically lift the end of the sentence to show you are asking, not telling.
Well, undeniably, it's a musical cue that signals respect.
Let's talk about how this cultural disconnect translates into writing. I see a lot of German speakers overusing highly formal English in their emails. They translate the elaborate structure of formal German business letters into English, and the result sounds like a ghost from the 1800s wrote it.
Oh, the Victorian ghost. Yes. Traditional German business writing is famously structured and uses archaic, highly formal vocabulary, mit freundlichen Grüßen. When that mindset is mapped onto English, you get sentences like, "I would like to inquire whether you would be available for a telephonic conversation," or "I hereby request your immediate assistance in this matter."
It feels so cold. Modern professional English is so much warmer and breezier. You don't need to sound like a 19th century aristocrat to be taken seriously. Instead of, "I would like to inquire," just say, "Would you be free for a quick call this week?" Instead of, "I hereby request," say, "Could you give me a hand with this?" Warmth and clarity are prized over rigid formality.
And please, when signing off an email, do not directly translate mit freundlichen Grüßen into "with friendly greetings." It sounds incredibly bizarre and overly intimate to an English reader. Stick to the standard conventions. Kind regards, best regards, looking forward to hearing from you, or simply best.
All right, we cannot talk about cultural differences without addressing the absolute minefield that is small talk. Germans traditionally view small talk as superficial, unnecessary, or even fake. So they tend to either skip it entirely, which makes them seem cold to Americans, or they treat the social questions way too literally.
Yes, the literal interpretation is a classic pitfall. In German culture, asking "Wie geht es dir?" is a genuine inquiry into your state of mind or your physical health. If someone asks, they expect a real answer. But in English, especially in America, "How are you?" is very often not a question at all. It is simply a greeting.
I've heard it described as a dolphin sending out a sonar ping. The dolphin isn't asking for an essay, it's just pinging to acknowledge another dolphin is in the water.
That's a perfect metaphor. If a coworker walks past your desk and says, "Hey, how are you?" and you stop them to say, "Actually, I've been quite tired, my back is hurting, and the train was delayed," the American coworker is going to be completely bewildered. They just wanted to ping back. The expected response is short, positive, and reciprocal. "Good. Thanks. How about you?" Or, "Not bad. Looking forward to the weekend. You."
It's not about being fake or hiding your true feelings. It's just a different social function. The goal of small talk in English is to establish connection and goodwill, not to perform an information dump. You keep it to light shared topics. The weather, weekend plans, generic work observation.
All right. Can you believe this rain? Busy week. It's social glue. Practice making these warm, short responses automatic and you will instantly fit into the culture.
Let's move to something that a lot of learners intentionally avoid. Idioms. Idiomophobia. German speakers are smart, and they quickly realize that translating German idioms directly into English sounds completely insane. Like, you can't say, "I think my pig whistles," when you're surprised. So, to avoid looking foolish, they just stop using idioms altogether and stick strictly to literal clinical language.
Which is a shame because English, especially corporate English, relies massively on idiomatic expressions. If you don't use them, your speech can sound very mechanical and dry. You have to start integrating natural American or British expressions into your vocabulary.
Give us some essential ones to start with.
In a business context, you need to know that hit the ground running means starting a new project quickly and with great energy. You need to know that being on the same page means everyone understands and agrees with the plan. Let's make sure we're all on the same page before we launch.
Touch base is another massive corporate idiom. Let's touch base later this week. It just means to connect briefly for an update or circle back. I don't have the answer right now, but I'll circle back on this after the meeting.
And don't forget the casual daily ones. If you are feeling slightly sick, you are under the weather. If you took on a project that is way too complicated for you, you bit off more than you can chew. And if you're waiting for someone else to make a decision or take action, the ball is in their court. Learning these doesn't just help your listening comprehension. Using them actively makes you sound fluent, integrated, and natural.
Okay, we have reached the very last item on our deep dive. Overusing interesting and other filler words. This is about active listening.
In German, the word interessant is a brilliant, versatile response. You can use it to acknowledge almost any piece of information. But in English, if someone is telling you a story and you repeatedly just nod and say, "That is very interesting," it starts to sound incredibly detached. It sounds like you're analyzing them as a scientific specimen, or worse, that you aren't really paying attention at all.
There is also that rapid-fire German listening habit that causes friction. The yes, 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 or exactly.
Yes. When an English speaker is explaining something and the German listener is rapidly going yes, yes, yes in the background, the English speaker feels rushed. It feels like the listener is saying, "I already know this. Hurry up and finish your sentence."
So what is the fix? How do we show that we are actively engaged without sounding robotic or impatient?
You need to develop a wider, more varied response vocabulary that matches the emotion of what the person is saying. If they say something surprising, don't say interesting. Say, "Oh, that's fascinating," or "Wow, really, I had no idea." If they explain a concept, say, "That makes a lot of sense."
I hadn't thought about it that way. It's such a great compliment to the speaker, and it shows deep, active listening.
It's a wonderful phrase. And instead of the rapid fire, yes, 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 use slower, calmer affirmations to pace the conversation. Right. Totally. I hear you. Absolutely. For sure. It slows down the interaction and makes it feel like a genuine human exchange rather than a high-speed data transfer.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We've completely deconstructed the English language for the German brain. We started with the deep architectural roots of word order and the strict rules of the timeline. We navigated the treacherous waters of false friends and the nuances of make versus do. We wrestled with the physical gymnastics of the TH and W sounds. And finally, we learned the delicate social dance of politeness, hedging, and small talk.
It's a lot to process. And to anyone listening, I want to reiterate something crucial. Your German linguistic background is a massive asset. It provides you with a robust analytical framework for understanding how grammar functions. Your heightened awareness of language is a gift, not a handicap. Every single advanced learner goes through this exact process of recalibration. You have to unlearn the shortcuts to find the true path.
That's a beautiful way to frame it. I am incredibly proud of anyone who made it through this entire deep dive. The commitment to keep learning, to push past the comfortable plateau of good enough and reach for true fluency, that is what separates successful communicators from everyone else. But listening to a discussion isn't enough. We have to make this actionable. How do we take all this theory and turn it into muscle memory?
The best way to lock this in is through small, consistent daily habits. A simple 5-minute daily practice plan will do more for your fluency than an hour of studying once a week.
Here's the plan we recommend. Days 1 and 2. Focus entirely on your physical mouth mechanics. Do pronunciation drills for the TH, W, and V sounds in front of a mirror every morning. Exaggerate the movements until they feel normal.
Definitely.
Days 3 and 4, practice shadowing for connected speech. Find a video of a native speaker, take a short paragraph, and read it aloud, matching their exact rhythm, mashing the words together. Get comfortable with gonna and hafta.
Make it messy.
Yeah. Days 5 and 6, bring the vocabulary into the real world. Force yourself to use 3 new idioms in your actual conversations or emails at work. Tell someone you'll touch base or circle back.
And day 7 is the audit. Record yourself speaking on your phone for 2 minutes on any random topic. Talk about what you did over the weekend, then play it back and actively listen to yourself as a critic. Did you accidentally push the verb to the end? Did you use since instead of for? Did your TH sound like a D? Identify your specific patterns and then repeat the weekly cycle, focusing on those weak spots.
That is exactly how you transform your English. Now, as we wrap up, I want to hand it over to you for a final thought, something for our listeners to mull over that goes beyond just grammar and phonetics.
I'd love to. Think about this concept. Language isn't just a utilitarian tool for exchanging data. It is the medium through which you choose the specific persona you project to the world. When you master these subtle nuances, the warmth of English politeness, the effortless flow of connected speech, the natural rhythm of the idioms, you aren't losing your German identity. You are gaining a completely new parallel English identity. You get to define that character. So the question is, who do you want that person to be?
A parallel identity. What an incredible perspective to close on. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this massive linguistic journey. We've thrown a lot at you, but we know you have the tools to master it. Keep practicing, keep stepping out of your comfort zone, and remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.